Hello and welcome to a look at Detroit for the Amiga, a game that was released by Impressions. For reference, I have mentioned before if an AGA version exists, I will usually cover that, and this is indeed the AGA version of this particular title. The year is 1908, and you have a dream of selling those new spiffy things called automobiles to the paying public, and of course not only doing that but also hopefully becoming filthy rich in the process. As you start the game, you can select a difficulty setting, and the lowest difficulty setting is so incredibly easy that the early game, which is usually the most challenging part, is more or less irrelevant, whereas the highest difficulty starts you off with being in debt to the bank, which is always a lovely position to be in. Then you have to select a starting region, and Impressions tried to make this game in certain ways somewhat historically accurate. So depending on the region you are selecting, people may or may not be interested in any way, shape or form in the stupid little thing you have produced called a car, automobile, vehicle, whatever you decide to phrase it as. And you can, in certain starting regions, find yourself quite hampered by the fact that people have no interest in your noisy thing with wheels. But once you have selected a starting location, you have to name your company, and then you are given a pre-designed cart to get you off your to get your feet wet, or whatever you decide to call it. And then it is time to go into the administration side of things and hire some staff. The cars are not going to build themselves, so you need some assembly workers in order to build said vehicles. But of course you also need technicians to invent new spiffy stuff you can put on your vehicles, so you can create and design new ones and sell them for even more money than the earlier ones in order to become even more rich. And you have to set the wages for the different worker types and the potential benefits you want to give them, and it is definitely a benefit to give them benefits. The availability of assembly workers and technicians are directly tied to how much you pay. Obviously, if someone being offered $100 a month, which of course back then would have been a certified fortune, would much rather work for such an employer than someone offering them $20 a month. But you at the same time have to be careful that you don't offer them so generous wages that you end up bankrupting yourself trying to pay the wages. Then it's time to assign your assembly workers to your production lines in your factory, producing your spiffy new car, and you can set any number between 1 and 255 for each individual assembly line. But of course, because of the fact that the factory at this stage is a very, very low level, you can only have so many assembly workers working a single line before it becomes overcrowded. So at the beginning you definitely want to keep the numbers somewhat small. Once that is set up, you have to have a sales office in order to actually sell the vehicles, and once that is sorted, you have to define the price of the vehicle you are trying to sell. And that is actually one of the more challenging aspects of the early game because the pricing can be very, very deceptive. But I will return back to that at the back end of this video. Then you also, of course, need to gather some publicity in order to actually make people aware of the fact that your company exists and is trying to sell them automobiles. So you have to spend some money on various different publications in order to draw attention to your vehicles. As stated, Impressions tried to make this game somewhat historically accurate, so depending on the time period, there's certain publications that makes more sense to advertise in than others. Once all that is done and the sales office has vehicles to sell, then you can progress a month, where the game will give you a checklist over the various things that you could do, and you may want to glance over to make sure that you got everything done, because you give an option to go back and do the things you may have forgotten about. Then the next month will start, and sometimes you will get a newspaper clipping stating some company of whatever description it may be. It could be yours. Is ahead of the time with the new design of this spiffy thing called a vehicle and all that kind of stuff. Then you get an overview of your profits or losses, depending on such, and then you basically, in case you have serious losses, have to go through various different reports to see where the problem lies, and that is also something I will get back to at the back end of this video. Now, of course, this being a sort of management tycoon type game, the technical aspects are going to be somewhat limited. Well, they are, at least in this particular title. Basically, all the graphics are still screens, except for the car design section, where you have very, very limited changing in graphics. The graphics are perfectly acceptable, nothing spectacular. It doesn't look bad. You can easily identify everything as it is expected to look, and of course, it being of 1908-ish period, it looks believable. Certain animations were present in the PC version, which were not present in the Amiga version, and this is likely due to the fact that you could not buy a PC without a hard drive, whereas of course it was about 20% of all Amiga users that actually had hard drives. I think the number was around that time. So in order to minimize disk swapping and excessive loading, small animation sequences are usually cut, which is a bit of a shame, but it doesn't wreck anything for the game. The sound side of things, the sound effects do what they need to do, and nothing more. I mean, nothing stands out negatively or positively. So, yeah. The music is periodic for the time era of the start of the game, at least. I don't know whether the music changes as you progress in the game, because I haven't played it long enough to discover such. But, I mean, the music is a bit tedious, to be honest. But thankfully there is a menu in the game that you can opt to disable the music if it blocks you. The game can be controlled with mouse or keyboard, or a combination of both, and while the controls are perfectly okay, certain click zones are a bit too tight on the world map when you're trying to establish an office or a factory in a new region. It can be very easy to click on a different region than the one you intended to, and it is something to be mindful of, that you double check where you actually click so you open a branch in the correct territory. Neither the manual nor the following tutorial tells you how important the initial startup of your company is. Because it would be easy to think that it's a new company, so you haven't got many funds, so you have to be somewhat slow at the start. But that is definitely not the case of this particular title. If you put up one line of assembly to produce your spiffy vehicle and try to sell them, you will find that you go bankrupt incredibly quickly. What you need to do from the get-go is to be super aggressive. The logic of supply and demand even implies that you always want to make sure that there's slightly less supply than the demands, because you want to keep the demand going. But that is definitely not the case in this particular title. You want to oversaturate the market with your cars. You would rather build 50 cars too many than 5 cars too few. Obviously, you want to make sure you don't stockpile 100 million cars, because that's just wasted resources, but especially early on in the game, you definitely want to be expanding, which is where the game sort of falls apart. Because you have to sort assembly workers and sales officers and prices for the different vehicles in whatever region you are in. That is a process you have to repeat as you expand to different regions, and you have to set up supply lines and all that kind of stuff. And the more you expand, the more convoluted and outright tedious it can become. So from my personal point of view, I just settled for a certain profit and then left it at that and stopped expanding to other regions. I said I was going to return to the car pricing thing. Impressions are stating that they were trying to make this game historically accurate, and I don't know whether it is due to that aspect or a hiccup somewhere. But the intention of the automobile was for it to be a status symbol. Car manufacturers deliberately sold their cars at quite a cost in order to keep the riffraff from getting hold of one. Something that Henry Ford changed with the Model T somewhat later. But you will likely find, if you play this game, that you initially have to price the cars significantly higher than you may think. Lack of sales can just as much be due to low-priced cars than high-priced cars, so it's something to be mindful of. You can play this game 1 to 4 players, and it definitely feels like it's been designed with multiple players in mind. Because if you're playing by yourself, you have 3 competitors, but it doesn't really feel like you're competing against them. You can see on various different charts that someone's got more sales than you and more profits than you, but it doesn't really feel like it has any relevance. So it feels like you're playing in your own little enclosed world. It did for me at least. And yeah, I forgot the competitors were there because they never felt like they were competing against me. The door of the game is definitely developing new parts and designing new cars and put them on the market, and then develop new parts again and design new cars. The logistical aspect of it, certain people will like, certain people will dislike. And the reviews for this game are all over the place, ranging from 22% to 85%, because one reviewer hated the logistical aspect and another reviewer absolutely loved it. But something to be mindful of is the fact that this game has a play time of 100 years, and each year has 12 turns, so playing a full game requires you to play 1200 turns. Even doing the bare minimum, that is still going to take quite a while, and going through list upon list upon list upon list of data or reports and whatnot may not be enough excitement or the average player. I definitely find this game enchanting, but yeah, I don't know. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time. Bye bye for now.